The sky turned black on a Tuesday morning. Park Do-hyun was eating breakfast with his grandmother when the first Valari warship appeared over Seoul. The massive vessel blocked out the sun like a floating mountain. Its shadow stretched across the entire city. Within minutes, hundreds more ships appeared across the planet. They came from nowhere. They came without warning. And they came to conquer. The war lasted exactly 3 days. Human missiles flew toward the alien ships and exploded harmlessly against invisible shields. Fighter jets fell from the sky like burning leaves when strange purple beams cut through them. Tanks melted into pools of liquid metal. Soldiers fired millions of bullets that bounced off enemy armor like raindrops hitting a window. On the third day, every government on Earth surrendered. There was no choice. Humanity had lost. Do-hyun remembered standing in the street with his grandmother as the Valari soldiers marched through their small town outside Chuncheon. The aliens were tall and thin, with hard shells covering their bodies like insects. They had 4 arms and faces full of sharp, clicking parts. Their eyes were large and completely black. They looked at humans the way humans looked at ants. His grandmother had squeezed his hand tight. "Remember who you are," she whispered. "Remember what your grandfather taught you." His grandfather, Park Jin-ho, had been a soldier many years ago. He fought in wars that most people had forgotten. He had taught Do-hyun how to shoot, how to move quietly through forests, how to survive when everything seemed hopeless. The old man was still alive, living in his farmhouse in the mountains. The aliens had not found him yet. Do-hyun was 23 years old and had served 2 years in the Korean army before the invasion. He knew how to fight, but fighting seemed pointless now. Human weapons could not hurt the aliens. Their shields stopped everything. For 3 months, Do-hyun worked in the occupation camps. The Valari forced humans to build new structures for their soldiers. They made humans tear down their own buildings, their own monuments, their own history. Anyone who refused was executed in front of the others as a lesson. Do-hyun watched and waited. He was not the only one. On a cold night in October, a woman approached him in the camp. Her name was Yoon-hana. She was 35 years old, with short black hair and eyes that had seen too much death. Before the invasion, she had been a sergeant in the Special Forces. Now she was planning something dangerous. "I know who you are," she said quietly. "I know your grandfather. He sent me to find you." Do-hyun felt his heart beat faster. "What does he want?" "He wants you to fight." Do-hyun shook his head. "Our weapons are useless. You saw what happened. Bullets cannot penetrate their shields." Hana smiled. It was not a happy smile. It was the smile of someone who knew a secret. "Your grandfather has something. Something old. Something the aliens have never seen." That night, Do-hyun escaped from the camp. Hana helped him slip past the guards while they were distracted by a small fire she had started on the other side of the compound. They ran through the darkness for hours until they reached the mountains. His grandfather's farmhouse looked the same as Do-hyun remembered. The old wooden building sat at the edge of a pine forest, surrounded by fields that had not been farmed since the invasion. Smoke rose from the chimney. A light glowed in the window. Park Jin-ho was waiting at the door. He was 78 years old now, with a face full of wrinkles and hands rough from decades of hard work. But his eyes were still sharp. His back was still straight. He hugged his grandson without words. Inside the farmhouse, Do-hyun found more people waiting. There were 12 of them in total. Former soldiers, police officers, hunters, and ordinary people who refused to accept defeat. They had gathered here in secret, waiting for something. "Show him," Hana said to the old man. Jin-ho led them to the barn behind the house. He pushed aside bales of hay and pulled up wooden boards from the floor. Beneath was a hidden space, and in that space was something wrapped in oilcloth. Do-hyun helped his grandfather lift the heavy object onto the ground. When they unwrapped the cloth, he stopped breathing. It was a K-6 heavy machine gun, the same weapon that had been mounted on Korean military vehicles for decades. This one was old but perfectly maintained. The metal was clean and oiled. The barrel was straight and true. Beside it were sealed metal boxes full of ammunition. "This belonged to my unit," Jinho said. "I kept it hidden when I left the army. I always knew that one day we might need it again." Corporal Baek Sunwoo, a young man with nervous hands, shook his head. "With respect, sir, this is just a bigger gun. Bigger bullets. The alien shields stop everything." "No," Jinho replied. "Their shields stop energy. They stop heat. They stop light. That is how plasma weapons work. That is what they designed their shields to defend against." He placed his hand on the machine gun. "But this is not energy. This is mass. This is a heavy piece of metal moving very, very fast. Simple physics. Force equals mass times acceleration." Hana stepped forward. "We captured some alien equipment last month. We tested it. Their personal shields can handle small bullets, but barely. It takes most of their shield energy just to stop a normal rifle round." "Something this powerful?" She looked at the machine gun. "This will go right through." Do-hyun stared at the weapon. It was old technology, ancient by alien standards. The Valari commanders mocked human weapons every day. They called them primitive. They called them useless. They laughed at the idea that such things could ever threaten them. Maybe that was exactly why this would work. "We need more weapons like this," Do-hyun said. "Where can we find them?" "Museums," his grandfather replied. "Private collections. Old military bases. There are hundreds of these guns across the country. Thousands. The aliens did not bother to take them because they thought they were harmless." The youngest person in the room was a girl named Cha Yeji. She was only 19, thin and quiet. The Valari had killed her parents for hiding food. She had walked for 3 days through the mountains to join the resistance. Now she looked at the machine gun with something burning in her eyes. "When do we start?" she asked. Do-hyun picked up one of the heavy ammunition boxes. The bullets inside were thick and solid. Each one was designed to punch through armor, through metal, through anything in its path. "Tonight," he said, "we learn how to use this. Tomorrow, we find more. And then we show the aliens what primitive weapons can do." Outside, snow began to fall on the mountains. The occupation forces continued their patrols, confident that they had already won. They had no idea that in a small farmhouse in the hills, the real war was just beginning. Commander Thrall enjoyed watching humans suffer every morning. He walked through the settlement that had once been called Chunchin. His personal guards followed behind him, their armor glowing with blue light from the shield generators built into their chest plates. The humans scattered before him like frightened animals. Thrall liked that. He liked the fear in their eyes. It made him feel powerful. Thrall was tall even for a Valari. His shell was dark green, almost black, and his forearms moved constantly as he walked. His face had sharp parts that clicked together when he talked or when he was angry. His eyes were solid black, but they saw everything. He had been a commander for 40 years. He had conquered 12 worlds. Earth was supposed to be easy. The humans had just barely discovered space travel. Their technology was primitive. Their weapons were a joke. This assignment was beneath him, and he let everyone know it. "This planet disgusts me," he told his second-in-command, a smaller Valari named Keth. "The air smells wrong. The gravity is too heavy. And these creatures are so weak, so fragile. I do not understand why High Command wanted this world." Keth clicked his face parts in agreement. The humans have resources we need. Minerals, water, and they make good workers when properly controlled. Workers, Thrall repeated with contempt. Slaves, you mean? That is all they are good for. They stopped in the central square where a group of humans had been gathered for labor duty. Old men and women mostly, since the young and strong had been sent to the mining camps in the north. These humans were being forced to tear down a bronze statue of some human leader that Thrall did not care about. One old man caught Thrall's attention. He worked slowly, carefully, his weathered hands handling the tools with skill. There was something in his posture that bothered Thrall. The old man was not afraid. His body was bent with age, but his eyes were clear and calm. Thrall walked toward him. His guards followed. You, Thrall said. The translator device on his chest turned his clicking sounds into human words. Stop working. Look at me. The old man put down his tools and looked up. His face showed nothing. No fear, no anger. Just patience. What is your name, human? Park Jinho. And what did you do before the Empire brought peace to your world, Park Jinho? The old man paused for a moment. I was a farmer. Before that, I was a soldier. Thrall's face parts clicked with amusement. A soldier. This fragile old creature had once fought in human wars. The thought was almost funny. He had seen recordings of human battles. Tiny projectiles flying through the air. Explosive chemicals. Metal vehicles that moved slowly across the ground. It was like watching children play with dangerous toys. A soldier, Thrall said loudly, making sure the other humans could hear. Tell me, old soldier, what weapons did you use in your wars? Jinho's expression did not change. Guns mostly. Rifles, machine guns, grenades, guns. Thrall laughed, his face parts clicking rapidly. He turned to his guards and spoke in his own language. He says they use guns. Chemical projectile weapons. Can you imagine? The guards laughed with him. Thrall turned back to Jinho. He reached down and grabbed the old man's arm, pulling him roughly to his feet. Several other humans looked up in alarm, but did not move. They knew what happened to people who interfered. Let me explain something to you, old soldier. Thrall pointed at one of his guards. See that armor? That shield? Your bullets cannot touch it. Your little metal projectiles hit our shields and fall to the ground like dead insects. We studied your weapons before we came here. We laughed at them. You spent centuries killing each other with such primitive tools, and you never developed anything better. He pushed Jinho backward. The old man stumbled but did not fall. Your guns are museum pieces, Thrall continued. Toys for children. Curiosities for historians. They are the reason your species was so easy to conquer. You put all your faith in weapons that belong in the past. And now? He spread his forearms wide. Now you belong to us. Jinho stood silently. Other humans watched from the edges of the square. The guards clicked their face parts in amusement. Nothing to say, old soldier? Thrall asked. No brave words? No promises of revenge? No, Jinho replied quietly. No promises. Thrall stared at him for a long moment. Something about the old man bothered him. There was no defeat in his eyes. No surrender. Just that strange, patient calm that seemed to be waiting for something. Get back to work, Thrall finally said. And remember what I told you. Your weapons are useless. Your resistance is impossible. The sooner you accept that, the easier your lives will be. He turned and walked away, his guards following. Behind him, Jinho picked up his tools and continued working on the statue. His hands were steady. His heart was calm. That night, after the guards had locked the workers in their sleeping quarters, one of the younger workers approached Jinho. She was one of the people who secretly carried messages for the resistance. Commander Thrall spoke to you today, she whispered. What did he say? Jinho smiled for the first time in weeks. He told me our weapons are primitive and useless. He told me we cannot hurt them. That is bad news. No. The old man's eyes sparkled in the darkness. That is the best news I have heard since the invasion began. Tell my grandson everything. Tell him what the commander said. Tell him where the patrols go and when. Tell him about the guard positions around the northern ridge. The messenger nodded and slipped away into the shadows. Jinho lay down on his thin sleeping mat and closed his eyes. In his mind, he could still see the K6 machine gun hidden in his barn. He could still feel the weight of those heavy bullets in his hands. The Valari thought human weapons were jokes. They thought old technology meant weak technology. They were about to learn a very important lesson. Some old things are kept, not because they are pretty or historic. Some old things are kept because they still work, because they still kill, because sometimes the old ways are the best ways. Park Jinho fell asleep with a smile on his face. He dreamed of thunder and fire and alien blood soaking into Korean soil. The northern ridge was cold and dark under a half moon. Park Do-hyun lay flat on the frozen ground, his body covered with a white sheet to blend with the snow. His fingers were numb despite his gloves. His breath made small clouds in the air, so he breathed slowly and shallowly to avoid being seen. Beside him, the K6 machine gun waited like a sleeping beast. They had spent 2 weeks preparing for this moment, finding the right position, learning the patrol routes, counting the seconds between each guard rotation. Nothing could go wrong. They would not get a second chance. Cha Yeji was 50 meters to his left, hidden behind a fallen tree. She carried a hunting rifle that her father had owned before the aliens killed him. The rifle could not penetrate alien shields on its own, but that was not her job tonight. She was there to watch the road and signal when the patrol was coming. Sergeant Yoon Hana was positioned on the opposite ridge with 2 other fighters. They carried whatever weapons they had found. Old pistols, a shotgun, a crossbow that one of them had made from scrap metal. These weapons would be useless against the shields. But if things went according to plan, the shields would not be a problem. The plan was simple. The machine gun would hit the patrol first. Heavy rounds, fired fast. The shields would try to stop them. The shields would fail. Then the others would finish whatever was left. Corporal Baek Sunwoo lay next to Do-hyun, ready to feed the ammunition belt into the machine gun. His hands were shaking, but not from cold. This was his first real combat. He had trained as a soldier, but the invasion happened before he ever saw a battle. "Are you scared?" Do-hyun whispered. "Yes," Sunwoo admitted. "Good. Scared means alive. Just do your job and we will be fine." A bird called 3 times in the distance. That was Yeji's signal. The patrol was coming. Do-hyun looked through his scope. The night vision was not working properly because of the cold, but he could see enough. 4 shapes were moving up the ridge road. Valari soldiers. Their bioluminescent markings glowed softly in the darkness, making them easy to spot. They walked casually, weapons holstered, talking to each other in their clicking language. Why would they be careful? Nobody had successfully attacked them since the invasion. Human weapons did not work. Human resistance was hopeless. These soldiers probably saw patrol duty as boring work, an easy assignment on a conquered world. Do-hyun tracked them with his scope. 300 meters, 200 meters, 100 meters. He had marked the kill zone earlier that day with small stones that only he could see. When the first soldier stepped between the stones, Do-hyun squeezed the trigger. The K6 roared. The sound was enormous. A deep thundering boom that echoed across the mountains like the anger of ancient gods. Fire burst from the barrel. Brass shell casings flew through the air. The whole gun shook with tremendous force. The first rounds hit the lead soldier directly in the chest. His shield flashed bright blue as it tried to absorb the impact. For a split second, it held. Then it flickered. Then it collapsed completely, overloaded by the massive kinetic energy of the .50 caliber bullets. The rounds continued through his body and exited from his back in an explosion of glowing blood. He was dead before he hit the ground. The second soldier tried to react. He reached for his plasma weapon with 2 of his 4 arms. He was fast. The Valari were naturally quick creatures, but the machine gun was faster. Do-hyun swept the barrel slightly to the right and sent a burst of fire into the second soldier's center mass. The shield held for half a second before breaking. The soldier came apart. The third soldier managed to fire 1 shot. A bright purple plasma bolt flew into the night sky, missing everything. Then the machine gun found him. His shield failed immediately because it was still recovering from the electromagnetic pulse of his own weapon. 3 heavy rounds tore through his chest and throat. The fourth soldier ran. This was the part of the plan that Do-hyun had worried about. The machine gun was powerful, but not accurate at long range when the target was moving. If the fourth soldier escaped, he would warn the others. The element of surprise would be gone. But Yeji was ready. She rose from behind the fallen tree and fired her hunting rifle. The bullet hit the running soldier in the back. Normally, his shield would have stopped it easily. A small rifle round was nothing compared to the plasma weapons his shield was designed to resist. But his shield was not working anymore. The massive electromagnetic disruption from the machine gun had affected all the shields nearby. They were designed to work together, sharing energy. When 3 of them collapsed at once, the fourth was weakened too. The rifle bullet went through his shield like it was not there. It punched into his back, cracked through his shell, and dropped him in the snow. Silence returned to the mountain. Do-hyun stared at the 4 bodies lying on the road. Glowing blood was spreading across the white snow. Steam rose from the wounds. The smell of gunpowder and alien flesh filled the air. 12 seconds. That was how long the battle had lasted. 12 seconds and 4 dead enemies. Sunwoo was breathing hard beside him. "It worked," he said. His voice was shaking. It actually worked. Yeji came running up the hill, her rifle in her hands. She stopped when she saw the bodies. Her face was pale, but her eyes were bright. "I got one," she said. "I actually got one." Sergeant Yoon-hana arrived with her team a few minutes later. They had watched the ambush from the opposite ridge. They had been ready to help if something went wrong. Nothing had gone wrong. Hannah walked among the bodies, examining the wounds. "The shields could not handle the kinetic force," she said. "Just like we thought. The energy weapons of other species depend on heat and light. The Valari designed their defenses to stop those things. But raw mass? Simple physics? They never considered it because they thought it was too primitive." Do-hyun stood up slowly. His arms ached from holding the machine gun. His ears were ringing from the noise. But he was alive. They were all alive. And 4 enemies were dead. "We need to move," he said. "Take their weapons. Take anything useful. Then we disappear." They worked quickly, stripping the bodies of plasma pistols, communication devices, and shield generators. The shield generators might be useful for study. Understanding how they worked would help defeat them. Before they left, Do-hyun looked back at the bodies one more time. Commander Threll had called human weapons museum pieces. He had laughed at the idea of projectile weapons. He had mocked their primitive technology. Do-hyun whispered into the cold night air. "Tell your commander that the museum is open, and we have plenty more exhibits to show you." Then they vanished into the darkness, carrying their ancient weapon toward the next battle. Commander Threll stood in the cold room where they kept the dead, 4 bodies lay on metal tables in front of him. 4 soldiers who had been alive yesterday morning. 4 soldiers who had been killed by weapons that Thrall had called toys. He stared at the wounds and felt something he had not felt in many years, fear. The injuries were terrible. Large holes in the front. Larger holes in the back. The heavy projectiles had smashed through shells and shields and bodies with unstoppable force. No energy weapon made wounds like these. Energy weapons burned. They cut, they melted. These wounds were different. These wounds were made by something heavy and fast and brutal. Kinetic projectiles, said his science officer, a thin Valari named Drell who specialized in enemy technology. High caliber, chemically propelled. Based on the wound patterns, I estimate the projectiles were at least 12 millimeters wide and traveling at approximately 900 meters per second. I know what killed them, Thrall said. His voice was tight with anger. I want to know how their shields failed. Drell made a nervous clicking sound with his face parts. The shields were not designed for this type of attack, Commander. They disperse heat energy. They redirect electromagnetic pulses. They absorb the kinetic force of small projectiles. But these projectiles were not small. The energy required to stop each round was enormous. The shields tried to compensate, but they overloaded within seconds. Then fix them. Recalibrate them. Make them stronger. We cannot, Commander. Not with portable units. Drell pulled up a holographic display showing energy calculations. To stop projectiles of this mass and velocity, we would need shield generators the size of vehicle units. Our soldiers would have to carry machines weighing hundreds of kilograms on their backs. It is not possible. Thrall slammed his 4 fists against the wall. The sound echoed through the morgue. His guards stepped back. They had never seen their commander lose control before. These are primitives, Thrall shouted. They are supposed to be easy. They are supposed to be already defeated. How can weapons that belong in museums be killing my soldiers? Nobody answered. Nobody had an answer. The news spread quickly. Despite Thrall's orders to keep it secret, soldiers talked. Within days, every Valari on the peninsula knew that humans had found a way to kill them. The attitude of the occupation force changed overnight. Soldiers who had walked through human settlements with confidence now moved in tight groups, constantly watching the shadows. Patrols that used to be routine became tense and frightening. Every dark corner might hide a human with a heavy weapon. Every forest might contain an ambush, and the attacks continued. 3 days after the first ambush, a supply convoy was hit by explosives on the mountain road. Old grenades and homemade bombs. Simple weapons but effective. 8 soldiers died when their vehicles crashed into a ravine. A week later, a guard post on the eastern border was attacked at night. The humans used shotguns and hunting rifles. By the time reinforcements arrived, 6 more soldiers were dead, and the attackers had vanished. Reports came in from across the peninsula. Resistance cells were forming everywhere. Humans were breaking into museums to steal old weapons. They were digging up guns that their grandparents had buried decades ago. They were raiding abandoned military bases and police stations for anything that could fire a projectile. The old weapons were everywhere, and they all worked. Thrall ordered a crackdown. He doubled the patrols. He imposed curfews. He ordered random executions in the settlements to terrify the population into obedience. 10 humans were shot in the central square as a warning. 20 more were taken to prison camps. It did not help. If anything, it made things worse. Every execution created new fighters. Every crackdown pushed more humans toward the resistance. Families who had been willing to accept occupation became enemies when their relatives were killed. The resistance grew faster than Thrall could crush it. Park Do-hyun watched this happen with grim satisfaction. His group had grown from 12 fighters to almost 50. They had found 4 more heavy machine guns, 3 mortar, dozens of rifles, and hundreds of grenades. Every successful attack brought more people to their cause. Every dead alien proved that victory was possible. "They do not understand," Sergeant Yoon Hana said during a meeting in their new hideout, a cave complex in the eastern mountains. "They do not understand human nature." "What do you mean?" asked Corporal Beek Sunwoo. "The Valari conquer through fear. They show their power and expect everyone to surrender. It works on most species because most species are sensible. They see that resistance is hopeless and they stop fighting." Hana smiled coldly. "But humans are not sensible. We are stubborn. We are angry. We hold grudges for generations. When you hurt us, we do not become afraid. We become determined." Cha Ye-ji nodded. She had become one of their best fighters. The quiet girl who had arrived shaking with grief was now calm and deadly with any weapon. "My grandmother told me stories about the old wars," she said. "Korea was invaded many times. By Japan, by others. Each time, the Korean people fought back. Sometimes for years. Sometimes for decades. We never stopped fighting until we were free. The Valari made a mistake," Doyun added. "They studied our technology, but they did not study our history. They thought that conquering our cities meant conquering our people. They were wrong." A messenger arrived that night with news from Do-hyun's grandfather. Jinho had been gathering information in the settlement, pretending to be a harmless old man while actually counting soldiers and mapping patrol routes. His latest message contained something exciting. Commander Thrall had requested reinforcements from the main Valari fleet. The request had been denied. There were uprisings happening all over the planet. Every continent was fighting back. The Valari did not have enough soldiers to send help to every location. Thrall was on his own. "He is scared," Doyun said after reading the message. "The commander who laughed at our weapons is now afraid of them. He knows we are coming for him. What do we do?" Sun West. Doyun looked at his fighters. 50 brave people with old guns and fierce hearts. Enough to cause damage. Maybe enough to do something more. "We give him something to really be afraid of," Doyun said. "We attack his command post. We kill the commander. We show every human on this peninsula that the invaders can be beaten." The cave fell silent. Everyone understood what this meant. The command post was heavily defended. Many of them would die, but many of them had already lost everything: family, friends, home. They had nothing left to lose except their lives, and they were willing to spend those lives for freedom. Yeji was the first to speak. "When do we attack?" "First, we need more weapons. More people. We need to coordinate with other resistance cells in the area." Dahyun stood up. "We have 2 weeks. Find every gun you can. Recruit every fighter you can. In 2 weeks, we take back our country." Outside the cave, the moon was rising over the mountains. Somewhere in the distance, a Valari patrol was walking nervously through the darkness, jumping at every sound. The hunters had become the hunted. The conquerors were now the afraid, and in his command post, Commander Thrall stared at the message that had been delivered to his window by an arrow. A weapon so primitive that his guards had never thought to defend against it. The message contained only 4 words: "We are coming for you." Thrall did not sleep that night. Dawn came gray and cold on the day of the attack. Park Do-hyun stood on a hill overlooking Commander Thrall's command post. The building had been a Korean government office before the invasion. Now it was surrounded by walls, guard towers, and automated weapons that could track and destroy anything that moved. 300 Valari soldiers protected the commander inside. They had shield generators, plasma cannons, and armor designed to withstand any human assault. Dahyun's force numbered 47 fighters. They had 6 heavy machine guns, 2 mortar, 38 rifles and shotguns, and more grenades than he could count. They also had something the Valari did not expect. They had anger. They had patience. And they had a plan. Remember, Sergeant Yunhana said to the fighters gathered in the forest, their shields are designed to share energy. When one shield is hit, the others help absorb the force. That is why we hit them all at once, everywhere, from every direction. Overwhelm the network. Break the shields. Kill them all. The fighters nodded. Many of them would not survive the next hour. They knew this. They accepted this. Some of them wrote letters to family members that would be delivered if they died. Others simply prayed or sat quietly with their thoughts. Cha Yeji loaded her rifle and checked her ammunition. She had become one of their best shots. 6 alien kills in the past 2 weeks. Each one a payment for what they had done to her parents. Are you afraid? Doyun asked her. No, she said. I was afraid before. When I was alone. When I thought there was no hope. Now I have hope. Now I have purpose. There is nothing left to fear. At exactly sunrise, the attack began. The first mortar shell landed inside the compound walls. The explosion was small but loud. Guard posts lit up with alarms. Soldiers ran to defensive positions. Automated weapons began scanning for targets. This was the distraction. The real attack came from underground. For 2 weeks, fighters have been digging tunnels toward the command post. Slow, careful work in the darkness. They had moved tons of dirt by hand, bucket by bucket, hiding the evidence in the forest. 3 tunnels, each ending just inside the compound walls. When the mortar shells started falling, Corporal Beek Sunwoo led his team through the first tunnel. They emerged inside a storage building at the edge of the compound. Before the guards could react, Sunwoo and his team opened fire with their machine gun. The sound was deafening. The heavy rounds tore through shields and bodies and walls. Valari soldiers, who thought they were safe behind cover, discovered that cover meant nothing against .50 caliber bullets. The rounds went through walls, through doors, through anything in their path. Hannah's team emerged from the second tunnel near the main gate. They had brought explosives, homemade but powerful. The first bomb destroyed the gate. The second destroyed the automated weapons covering the entrance. Then the machine gun opened up and more shields began to fail. Dohyun led the main assault through the front gate. Yeji was beside him, her rifle cracking as she picked off soldiers trying to organize a defense. Behind them, 30 fighters poured into the compound with everything they had. The battle was chaos. Plasma bolts flew through the air, bright and deadly. 3 fighters fell in the first minute, their bodies burned by alien weapons. But for every human that died, 10 aliens died with them. The heavy machine guns cut through the defenders like scythes through wheat. Shields flickered and collapsed. Bodies fell. The Valari tried to regroup at the main building. They formed a defensive line with their remaining soldiers, overlapping their shields to create a stronger barrier. It was good tactics. It would have worked against plasma weapons or energy beams. But Dohyun had saved his mortar for this moment. Fall back. He shouted to his fighters. Give us distance. The humans retreated 30 meters. Then the mortar fired. Old explosive shells arced through the air and came down on the Valari defensive line. The explosions were enormous. The concussive force hit all the shields at once. The network tried to absorb the energy. The network failed. Shields collapsed across the entire line. The fighters charged forward again. This time, there was nothing to stop them. Commander Threll watched the destruction from his command center. Through the windows, he could see his soldiers dying, his defenses crumbling, his conquest falling apart. He could hear the thunder of human weapons getting closer. The ancient primitive thunder that he had mocked for months. He should have called for evacuation. He should have fled while there was still time. But pride held him in place. He was a commander. He had conquered 12 worlds. He would not run from primitives with museum weapons. The door to his command center exploded inward. Cha Yeji stepped through the smoke, her K6 machine gun braced against her hip. The weapon was almost too heavy for her to carry. She carried it anyway. Behind her came Do-hyun, his arm wrapped in bloody bandages from a plasma wound he had received during the assault. Threll's 4 personal guards raised their weapons. Yeji fired. The machine gun roared. 3 guards fell in a spray of glowing blood. The 4th tried to shoot Do-hyun with a plasma pistol. Do-hyun shot him in the face with his grandfather's old revolver. Then they were alone with the commander. Threll stood behind his desk, his forearms spread wide. He was not holding a weapon. His shield generator was on his chest, but the display showed it was nearly drained. One more shot would break through. "You cannot win," he said. His translator made his clicking voice into human words. "The Empire will send more ships. More soldiers. You will be crushed." "Maybe," Do-hyun replied. He walked slowly toward the commander. "But you will not see it. Your soldiers here will not see it. And when your empire sends more, we will be ready. We have more weapons. Older weapons. Things your people have never seen." He stopped in front of Threll. The commander was tall, almost a full meter taller than Do-hyun. But standing there, surrounded by the bodies of his guards and the ruins of his command post, Threll did not look tall. He looked small. He looked defeated. "My grandfather was a soldier," Do-hyun said. "His father was a soldier. His father before him. Our people have been fighting wars for thousands of years. We have been killing each other since before your species learned to walk upright. You came to our planet and you laughed at our weapons. You called them primitive toys, museum pieces." He gestured to Yeji, who raised the machine gun. "This museum piece has killed more of your soldiers today than any plasma weapon ever made. Because weapons are not about technology. They are about putting holes in the enemy. We have been putting holes in enemies for a very long time. We are very good at it." Threll's face parts clicked rapidly. "Fear, anger, desperation. What do you want? Surrender? I can order my forces to stand down. We can negotiate." "We do not negotiate with invaders," Yeji said. "My parents tried to surrender. They were executed anyway." Her finger moved to the trigger. "Wait," Do-hyun said. Yeji paused. Do-hyun looked at Threll one more time. "There is one thing you can do. Before you die, you can send a message to your fleet. Tell them what happened here. Tell them that humans are not conquered. Tell them that our old weapons work. Tell them that every city, every village, every farm on this planet is full of people with ancient guns and eternal patience." He nodded to Yeji. "Tell them that the museum is open, and we have thousands of years of exhibits to share with anyone who comes to Earth." The machine gun fired one last time. When the sound faded, Commander Threll lay on the floor of his command center. The conqueror of 12 worlds had been killed by a weapon his species considered obsolete. By a 19-year-old girl whose parents he had ordered executed. By humans who refused to accept that their war was over. Outside, the surviving Valari soldiers were surrendering. Some tried to flee, but were caught by resistance fighters waiting in the hills. Others threw down their weapons and raised their arms. They had seen their commander die. They had seen their defenses fall. They wanted to live. Park Do-hyun walked out of the command center into the morning light. Sergeant Yoon Hana was there, covered in ash and blood but alive. Corporal Baek Sunwoo limped toward them, supporting another wounded fighter. Others emerged from the smoke and rubble. Not as many as had started the attack. But enough. It is over, Hana said. We won. Do-yoon shook his head. This battle is over. The war is just beginning. But now they know. He looked up at the sky where Valari ships still floated above the earth. Now they all know that we can win. Across the planet, the word spread. Korea had fallen. A commander was dead. Old weapons worked. The resistance was real. And everywhere, humans who had hidden their guns, who had buried their weapons, who had waited for a sign that fighting was not hopeless, began to dig up their ancient tools. The Valari Empire had conquered thousands of worlds. They had defeated species with technology far beyond humanity's. But they had never faced an enemy like this. An enemy that did not care about primitive or advanced. An enemy that only cared about victory. An enemy that had been preparing for war since before history was written. The liberation of Earth took 3 more years. Many more battles. Many more deaths. But in the end, the invaders left. Their final report to the Empire became famous among spacefaring species. A warning to anyone who might consider conquering the 3rd planet from that small yellow sun. Do not underestimate humanity.